Hello, my name is Maureen Frank. I'm really pleased to be talking to you about your inclusive leadership journey. I've been in the diversity and inclusion space for 18 years now and worked with over 25,000 leaders across the world. And there's not much that I haven't seen or heard, but I have no doubt you've got some stories to share with me. So we've modeled what we do around a really important coaching tool, which we call the Inclusive Leadership Shadow. We've used that one-on-one with our discussions with CEOs and executive teams. And what I've found is that leaders are telling me they want to spread that throughout their organization. So we've actually built it into a process that we call the Inclusive Leadership Commitment Challenge, which uses the Inclusive Leadership Shadow tool. So one of the quadrants of your inclusive leadership shadow is quadrant 1, what I say. So I'm going to share with you a couple of videos where it's all about me sharing with you just some of those things that I've heard, some of those quirky comments and questions that I've had over so many years, and to give you some advice as to how I would respond, in the hope that in giving you a few tips and trips, it helps you as you start to plan quadrant 1 around what I say, including how do I respond when people say things to me. So the first one I want to share with you is this. So not so long ago, a very senior leader, so someone who was absolutely used to getting his own way, being responded to, people snapping to and doing exactly what he said. We were having a conversation at a very important business meeting around our diversity and inclusion strategy. And he said, I know what we can do, Maureen, to fix cultural diversity, which was a really important point for him. He said, you know what we can do? We can have some food-based events on a monthly basis throughout the organisation. This was an organisation that had nearly 7,000 people. So that was going to be a mammoth task actually to organise. And I couldn't believe it because everyone sitting around the table just nodded at him and said, yes, what a great idea, knowing that we had this big plan and strategy that we'd worked on, and we knew that it was all about behavioural change. So I had to be the one who put my hand up and said, sorry, and let's call him Bob for a moment. Bob, unfortunately, that's not going to work. So this is the advice I gave. I said, diversity and inclusion has to stop being an event. Research right now shows that employees don't really trust leaders and their commitment to diversity and inclusion. So there's a big gap between the big statements that we're making in organizations and what employees believe to be true. So employees are smelling tokenism a mile away. But also it's important to remember that in diversity and inclusion, we have limited resources. There's only so much we can do. So we've got to focus in on the one or two things that are truly going to make a difference. They may not be the fun things. They may not be the things that give us a good PR event. However, they are the things that are going to shift the dial because they change behavior. Now, at the mention of tokenism, unfortunately, this gentleman really bristled. Right? He said, I wouldn't be coming across with something that's in the diversity and inclusion space that's tokenistic, right? So I had to, notwithstanding the importance of this gentleman, let me tell you, he was very important. I had to stick to my guns. I knew that people and culture and the team that I was working with were absolutely smashed. I knew that we had a big plan around inclusive leadership and embedding some new habits, and that if we could make that work at critical mass, and that was going to take every ounce of effort and resource, that was the stuff that was really going to make a difference, so that they could get to the end of 12 months and go, you know what? We've actually changed some things. So that's my advice to you, right? Is that when people say things that come from a well-meaning place, but that actually they're suggesting that you do things that are initiatives that are really not going to change anything. My litmus test is always, will people go back to their desk or their office or their work environment and do things differently? And if the answer to that is no, then you should not do it. You need to take a great big red pen. You need to be the bad guy sometimes and suggest to well-meaning and sometimes very senior people that unfortunately we've got a direction. And that direction has been cast by those who are experts in behavioural change. So please let them go ahead and make that plan. And what we need from you is something different. We need visible commitment. We need visible championing. We need you to fully participate in what we are planning on doing so that you can show vulnerably that you're up for learning and growth and changing the way that you do things too.